Thank you so much for joining Dental Marketing Theory, a podcast by Gary Bird. In today's episode, Gary talks with Dr. David Janash. Gary and Dr. David chat about his dental journey and how he moved from dentist to consulting and lessons learned along the way. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment, as all of those things really help to get the word out about dental marketing theory. Hope you enjoy today's show.
All right, Dr. David, we are live. So good to have you today. I'm excited to talk with you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor.
Absolutely, yes. And I wanted to dive into how you got into dentistry.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So I'll tell the long story.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting time to be asking. I was born in the former Soviet Union in
Wow.
a country known as Georgia, which was part of the Soviet Republic. And right after I was born, they moved out of there and moved to Italy. And then I lived in Italy for a bit, and then eventually ended up in Queens, New York, where I consider myself, a resident of Queens, or I'm from Queens, is what I tell people. And growing up as a kid in Queens, back before we moved to America or Italy and then America, my mom was a teacher, and when we got to New York and she picked up a job, she would help other immigrant families from that part of the world, help them, put their kids in school, help them find jobs, get them furniture, all that stuff, keep their refrigerator full. And my dad pumped gas and drove yellow taxi cabs here in the city for a few years until they scrounged up enough money to sort of start their own business of their own. My dad
Mm-hmm.
went into repairing jewelry and designing jewelry, and my mom became a social worker. So watching them as a kid, I always thought that dentistry was one of those things that, like, I get to help people, I get to use my hands, and it was a great combination of the two things. And I sort of chose dentistry because of those two sort of career paths that they had pivoted through after we moved to America.
That's amazing. So how did dentistry even come up though? Because I don't think taxi cab and helping people and a social worker and then okay, dentistry. Like so how did dentistry get interjected into that conversation?
It was just, honestly, I knew that I was going to make a decent living, or had a feeling I was going to make a decent living. It was a career that I thought I could sort of dive into because of I was always good with like building model cars and puzzles, and
Mm,
I had an artistic side to me, sort of a curiosity that I had to constantly like itch that scratch where like what do I how do I make this smoother? How do I make this better? How do I make this prettier? And it was just like just all these things, like just the tinkering, that just sort of made sense.
yeah.
And I got to say, I had a couple of family members and maybe my own personal dentist growing up that sort of inspired me along the way as well. I can't forget those people as well, who helped me sort of make that decision. But I figured it out pretty young, and I just sort of pursued it, and then eventually started to love it more and more and get more comfortable with it, and got me to where I am.
Yeah, so then so you decide to become a dentist, you go to school. What happens after that?
I worked for a couple of offices coming out of school. One of them was someone who I still to this day I'm connected with and look up to a ton. And she allowed me to work at her office pretty much the first day out of school. And there was another office that I was working at that was like a pretty fast-paced, office, a lot of HMOs and like sort of lower paying plans or whatever. And I did that for a couple of years. And after a couple of years, again, this entrepreneurial sort of, bug in me, or voice in me or whatever said, you can do this on your own and you can do this better. So I decided to look up what was available here in New York City as far as like spaces are concerned, like, medical, dental spaces were concerned. And I
Mhm.
found a guy that had a space available that was, basically he built out an office that was a wee bit too large for what he could handle or was using. And he allowed me to sublet space from him for a couple of days a week. And this is back in 2006. So I had only been sort of out of school or out of residency for a couple of years. And back then I was, marketing online using websites that were available back then that are no longer even around anymore, unfortunately. But I was just marketing, and every 6 months it seemed like I was having a conversation with the guy like, hey, give me another day. I need 3 days a week. I need an additional op. I need an additional day. And then by the time we got to like 4 days a week, I found out that there was another space available in the building that was totally vacant. This was in a part of New York City that has extremely high rent, and
Mm,
pretty much like the best of the best were coming in, and the best of the best were actually practicing at this particular sort of area of New York City.
got
And
it.
it was not common for someone to sort of take on space and do a build out in a location like this where the rent was so high, something like $100 a square foot at the time. And I had a patient database of doing four, five, $600,000 a year, so it's just easy for me to get a loan and move upstairs and just sort of build out my dream practice at the time.
That's so cool. So now you've took the jump. You started from zero and you started that practice and built it out and just created that opportunity. And then, so how did you end up be building out a DSO and doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, so in 2000 and very, very late 2011, I was back at it again for whatever reason. An entrepreneurial voice in me said, "Go out and do it again. You can impact more lives, or there's more out there that you can do." And I came across this office in Times Square, which was a monster of an office. It was 10,000 square feet, had about 20 treatment rooms in it. And to be honest, Gary, it had more cockroaches in the waiting room than it had patients. And these guys were, licking a stamp every time they wanted to send someone a bill, licking a stamp every time they wanted to send someone a recall card, licking a stamp for pretty much everything. They didn't have,
Wow.
computers in there. In fact, they were using,
No systems.
just no systems, no nothing. And here I am, like, wow, you can do this on text message. You can do this via email. So
Yeah.
it's just a no-brainer as far as efficiencies and technology implementation, which was sort of my thing. And sort of one of the things that separated me earlier on was I was again getting back to the sort of idea of like tinkering with things all the time. I was pretty, a little bit of a tech geek back then,
Mm,
and just sort of found this behemoth of an office. It really changed my career, and I sort of managed, that practice as well as continued to treat patients 4 days a week, and sort of had those two things going on. And took a break from that for a little while, and then when my daughter was born, sort of decided, okay, if we can do a 21 chair office or a 20 chair office, like we can do anything. So
yep.
then just sort of really started to look at other opportunities with the team that I had, and then started acquiring offices at a much faster pace, and eventually got to the point where it made sense to sort of graduate to this title of being the CEO of a DSO.
That's awesome. And yeah, I know you guys are doing a great job. And right now, I know you guys are in a tough state. New York is not an easy place to be working anytime, really. If you can learn in New York, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. But also with COVID and everything that's going on that way, what are some of the obstacles that you guys are facing and you're working through right now?
Well, New York really depends on a ton of like foot traffic and density. It's a city of like 9 million plus people. And when everyone's working from home, that density is just not there anymore, right? So never mind a dental practice or our dental practices. Every dry cleaner, every pizzeria, every little corner
Mm,
store is dealing with this lack of density. So, in our case, we sort of did what we can to retain our staff, did what we can to communicate and stay in touch with our patients, essentially. And to be honest, did what we can to also recognize what opportunities were out there in the dental practice and acquisitions game, and found some opportunities to sort of pick up a couple of practices that were really sort of key to us surviving. And we're all working on sort of getting those offices on autopilot and getting them to turn around and do what we ask them, to do when we're finally done with them, if you will, getting them from point A to point B. But at the end of the day, like we're still not back to normal. We're still hoping for things to sort of get back. But we've made some changes. We've dropped insurance plans that just sort of weren't paying enough for us to make any financial sense. We beefed up our training systems, beefed up our accountability systems, things like that, communication systems, things like that.
mm.
So we got to work and just try to sort of get strong where we were weak and also get lean when we were fat. And it's slowly getting better day by day. And then Omicron hits. You got to ride each wave as it
Yeah.
comes. It is what it is.
What do you think the biggest takeaway from COVID for you was personally?
You know, um, for me personally, what I've learned is a large chunk of the people that you work with. in the time of a crisis, probably like 80 to 85% are basically just going to look for direction, right? They're just as stressed as anyone. They don't know what's next. They don't know what you're thinking as the leader. And they're going to basically just sit and listen and do nothing. And then there's unfortunately a small group of the population that sort of falls back and maybe gets into a dark time or a dark place in their mind and sort of falls back into all of the vices, all of their bad habits
Mm-hmm.
sort of pop out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of sad to see. I can
Yeah.
tell you, quite frankly, I was part of that group, unfortunately, that sort of went to a dark place. And then, thanks to some really, really great people in my life that I really still am quite grateful for and look up to on a daily basis, there are also a lot of people out there that all of a sudden they show up as true leaders and really
Yeah.
lead and show you the light, right, and show you the path. And so that was really fascinating to me because I've never been through anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully have had like a minimal amount of like sort of negativity or certain challenges that I've had to overcome. I thought they were challenges, but then COVID was a real challenge. So I
Yeah.
learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about how important it is to maintain really great relationships, maintain a really great perspective of the person in the mirror staring back at you. That was very, very key for me as well. And I made certain mistakes that I promise I will never make again in the time of a crisis. So it was a very, very valuable experience.
Yeah, and that's really true. It does either bring the best out of you or the worst out of you, and kind of pushes you in one direction or another. It doesn't really let you, any crisis doesn't let you kind of stay in the middle.
Yeah.
And That's great. I'm glad. I know you guys are rebounding, doing great. And so kind of changing gears on you just a little bit. So with some of your practices that you're acquiring, where what kind of pain points are they dealing with? So I can only imagine you're going through all these different turmoil, all this different turmoil during COVID, and then you're out here acquiring practices. Where were those practices at mentally? Where was their staff at? And then how did you help? Now they're integrating, right? There's probably a lot of questions. So walk me through that process and kind of where they were at mentally.
Yeah. So there was, I can tell you a ton of stories about that. But generally speaking, what we like to do is get involved with practices where there's a ton of potential or upside available that we can sort of mine, whether it's efficiency or culture, or just straight up like just making certain business decisions that my predecessor couldn't make or wouldn't make. Those are gambles or risks that we're able to make using our data, using our experiences and our people. So we bought an office. We bought an office. I got a phone call in April of 2020, right, like a month into COVID, where
Mm,
nothing was figured out yet.
yeah.
10-chair office for sale for like $125,000, right? And it was like, of course I'm not buying anything like right now. Everyone's dying. I mean, we're the global epicenter of this massive pandemic. I'm not spending any money. I don't have any money to spend. And then a couple months later, they called back and said, "Listen, we really want to get rid of this, and like we'll give you, we'll do anything we can to get rid of this. Our DSO is going under." So we took this big gamble and bought this office, and to this day, it's doing quite well. And it turned
Wow.
out that like they were just like terribly mismanaging their schedules. The staff was very unhappy. Every office we come into, on day one, we get looked at with kind of like, who is this guy and what the hell is he
Yeah.
doing here? Who are these people?
Yep.
Why are they all drunk off the same Kool-Aid? And how is everyone so happy? And whatever. But like
Mm,
everyone's like a little skeptical, but over time they get to know us a little bit better. They get to understand exactly what we're about, that we're not there to like, take advantage of anyone, that we have good intentions, that we're good people. And then over time, I guess some of that guard comes down, and then we're able to sort of really take things from point A to point B with them, with their help, and with our own sort of people and processes or whatever. And what can I say? To some degree, we've had a ton of success doing that. But we look for offices that have all that potential again and have all that upside available to them. If there was, you know, there was an office for sale that was doing $4 million a year and had a ton of cosmetic, a big cosmetic name or big celebrity clientele, we'd be like, that's cool. You can, that's not something we get involved with
yeah.
because the goodwill there is just harder to transfer.
Yeah.
And we really want to sort of stick to like
Well,
the
plus the
average
upside
sort
is
of.
not The upside is
Yeah,
not
like
as
we're
available,
gonna
right?
take, yeah, from 4 million to 4.1 is like not really anything that anyone could be bragging about, you know. But
Yeah.
so that's what we sort of avoid those opportunities, you know, respectfully to anyone who's listening. And look for really like the ones that just need a ton of TLC, whether that's a renovation, some technology, some culture, a combination of all three things, right? That's sort of what we are interested in. We bought one. We bought a couple of offices in outside of Maryland, right outside of DC, actually. One of them was 6 chairs collecting $700,000 a year, and I was like, "There's a ton of potential here, right?" With the schedule being inundated with HMOs or whatever. So just sort of pick and choose your spots. Understand, like sometimes it's a gut decision, to sometimes it's a whole business analytics platform that you can look into to get your guidance or whatever. But you know, to this day, a lot of it is gut. A lot of it is, you know, really, again, you know, just forming great relationships, understanding where people are coming from and where you can take them is really, I think, the biggest trick to this thing. But
Yeah.
that's sort of what we're into doing.
You said something there. You said one of the things that, technology or systems or culture, with systems are very predictable. Equipment is and technology is very predictable, but people aren't predictable and culture is not as predictable. So how do you manage that? Because I know that's really important to you guys that your team's happy and that they're doing well. But most of these opportunities, a lot of them are probably coming from not the greatest culture. So how do you bridge that gap and move them over?
You know, it's hard because the first thing you have to do is sort of respect what was there before. Because if you go in and start bashing someone and what they've built, essentially tarnishing their legacy, you don't really have a chance of building that goodwill with the team. So, you know, you sort of have to be very, very careful. The other thing, which is another, you know, quite an important piece, is I think in the past we would say something as simple as these are our values, and we want people to sort of stick to these values. And if you stick to these values, you'll be just fine, right? Well, I will tell you that as people have come and gone throughout the organization for whatever reason, Omicron, COVID,
Hmm.
pay rates, whatever it is, right? What I would tell you is as you become more dialed into the culture and your values and your purpose, and you start putting that message out for people to understand and appreciate, one of the things that I've learned is if you're persistent and if you actually say what you mean and mean what you say, and you have people who are not just preaching that for you and with you, but also represent proof that this is a thing that we've done.
Yeah.
Like it's no longer about a vision and a mission that I put forward. It's about this person actually is proof of this, right? Like our HR director has been through so much. Our ops support person has been through so much. Like we watch them come from homegrown into, you
Hmm.
know, answering the phones or sitting at the front desk or whatever. And we talk about growth and impacting lives in such a positive way through growth. And dentistry is sort of what we do or how we do that. But really, our purpose is to offer people personal and professional pathways for growth. And so it's not just enough to just say it. I think it's also important to prove it. And I think we've been
Mm.
able to do that, right? So when you have someone on the phone that you're trying to recruit to come into the office, whether they're sort of at the bottom of the totem pole or someone at a very high ranking position, you need proof as well as the vision and the mission and the purpose and all that to be spelled out. And again, really, what we've done, I think, is in a very New York City way, you know, which means like with our own language and our own body language and our own whatever, just sort of say what you mean and mean what you say in all the right ways so people get it, right? And
Yeah.
understanding that there's nothing wrong with sort of being who you are, representing what you need, what you expect. There's nothing wrong with that. However hard it might be for anyone else to grasp, I think our values, our purpose, our vision are things that are now more so than ever, to be honest, I can say
Yeah.
proudly, are designed to repel all the wrong people and attract all the right people now more so than ever before. So my advice would be to stand loud, say it proud, and say it, you know, honestly, more so than anything else to anyone else out there listening.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask you that about, your culture and your values, how they as they develop and as they turn in more into a living thing, right? That proof that you're talking about. it does attract a lot of the right people, but it also repels people. There's some people who don't want to be a part of that and don't want to be a part of what you're trying to do. And that's actually a really good thing. If you're kind of in the middle, it's hard to build an organization. It's hard to build and move in the direction that you want to move in. So that's awesome. What are some of the things that you've done to like scale your culture? I know people go round and round on this on, can you scale culture? How do you scale culture? How do you systematize it? What are some tips that you could give to people who are starting out and trying to build their culture to make that happen?
Well, first, I think, again, I've been lucky, really, really lucky to have a lot of people that just sort of believe in our vision and culture currently. Whether it's because they've been with us since day one, or they're just sort of, committed for all the reasons they want to see the company grow. They themselves are benefiting from the company's growth and themselves also believe in everything that the company represents. So you need a lot of people sort of evangelizing all the things that you believe in, right? That and codifying and quantifying and qualifying all those culture pillars are a huge first step, right? Then if you're lucky, you'll have people around you that sort of do scale that. And I'm not talking about a lot of people. I think you just need to start with a couple, right?
Yeah.
The next thing is, and then obviously, again, codifying, quantifying is another aspect, which takes some skill. Um,
And break that down to
every
me. What do you mean by that? Like what do you, can you define that a little bit further?
well, you know, for me, um, it happened to be my English bulldog, which is why we call it Underbite, right? And I just knew that all the people around me had the right mix of being sweet and tough when it was necessary, and that's not something that I think only exists or is necessary in New York City. That's something that you probably could use someone that's sweet and tough, whether you're in Des Moines, Iowa, or in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, California, and everything in between, right? So
Hmm.
you need people to sort of really embody that, right? The rest of it was sort of something that we ended up doing by gamifying things as much as possible, right? I like to have fun. Be, I'd like to think that the company is a fun place to work for. So we tried to gamify and sort of eliminate any monotony and redundancy as much as we can. So we're constantly having contests and little prizes that we give, and we recognize people for their individual as well as their professional accomplishments. So when someone buys a house, has a baby, makes a big investment, sort of whether it's outside the company or inside of their own sort of personal like little nook in the company, we want to celebrate that. Um, Actually, Alyssa Kiefer, who you might know,
Yeah.
actually helped us create a private internal Facebook group page where
Yeah.
we celebrate and we can scale that culture on a digital platform like Facebook, where,
Yeah.
hey, it's this person's birthday. Here's a video of
Yeah.
them blowing out their candles, right? Little things like that sort of help scale. Scaling is not one of those things that you just snap your fingers and it scales and it
Hmm.
happens. Scaling is a real art form in and of itself. So any little tool, and in our case, it's little things like the Facebook page and the contests and things like that. Those little things sort of, keep people informed, keep people involved, keep people
Yeah.
caring about what's going on. And that I think is how you scale culture. And then, the last thing, which is again, maybe a little bit of a no-brainer, but like can't be fake, right? I've had close team members, people on my leadership team, when things get tough, have asked me, "What are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? Is not in our culture. This is not consistent with our vision, with our values, with our culture. Like, why are we doing this? Right?
Mm.
Like, what? So you got to keep it real. You know,
Yeah.
um, if you can't keep it real, it'll fall apart. That foundational piece is definitely keeping it real.
Got it. I love that. And then, so any other tips on systematizing? So I know it's one thing to scale it and make sure that everybody's involved in it, but then how do you measure it and make sure that it's actually happening, especially the bigger that you get?
So, to be honest, I think I'm a nine quick start. So systematizing things is not on a Kobe
Yeah.
scale.
Yep.
Systematizing is not my forte, but again, I'm lucky to be around people that do have that ability and that creative sort of aspect to systematize things. Sometimes a system is just a calendar of events that
Hmm.
someone took the time to put together that marks and commemorates every holiday in the calendar, every sort of um, appropriate time in the calendar that a dental office needs to be reaching out to their patients, right? And not keeping it here, but actually writing it down is a big
Hmm.
part of, in my opinion, a big part of systematizing it, right?
Yeah.
And then again, just being around people that believe in the vision and the values that you're trying to promote and giving them the opportunity to sort of create something is something that I think sort of has helped me a lot. Systematizing is not my thing, but when
Got it.
you know, I am very good at recognizing a system when it works and giving
Yeah.
credit to the people that put it together. So I think it's a little bit of trial and error, obviously a ton of empowerment, right, and some delegation, and then the rest is, you know, just watching it all happen. Okay, this worked, this didn't work, and then, you know, pivoting when it didn't work or pivoting when it did, and sort of amplifying, you know, keeping your winners close and making sure that you lose, you have the loser sort of
Yeah.
be a learning experience and then go on
Weed
from
'em out.
there.
Yeah. Got it. And so, changing gears on you here. So now, so if a practice has that figured out, I believe something that they can begin to do is focus more on the consumer, right? So if you know your team's good, now you can go out and attract the right kind of patients. And so, talk a little bit about just consumerism in dentistry, your mindset on that when you started understanding that, and how what your view is on that.
Yeah, I actually just recently had something come across on social media that I found interesting. Um, I personally used to think that it was the way the office smelled. It was the way the office looked. It was, you know, the way the website looked that mattered more than anything. But this recent survey sort of took that and threw it up, like completely, like, you know, flipped it upside down for me, and said that patients mostly look at whether or not the dentist on the other sort of side of the conversation comes across as a competent individual or not. All these other things, all these things that, you know, the office has to look this way or the website has to look that way, those are all important, right? But there is this whole, you know, people are interviewing you as a dental office before they even come in, right?
Yeah.
So all those things are sort of, I used to think those were the things that made us stand apart back, especially, you know, 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, if you had a great looking website, that made you stand apart. But now everyone has a great looking website. And
Hmm.
I think that's like a no-brainer, and it's almost a necessity now. Same thing with
Yeah.
SEO. It's like a no, you have to have SEO.
Yeah.
Not having SEO, you don't have a chance, right?
Well, it's almost like
So
having a phone, right? Like it's like, yeah, you have
yeah,
to have a phone to be in business.
of
It's kind of
course,
a no
right.
brainer. Yeah.
So I would want to caution people to say like what got you what was necessary back then is sort of almost a given that you sort of have to have in place now. And so what we've done in order to sort of really continue that engagement and continue to get people to say yes is just make sure that the patient experience is as polished and as refined as possible. Because again, in New York City, there's so many dental offices, there's so much competition. You just need to be better than your next door neighbor. And 9 times out of 10, you'll be fine if you're better than your next door neighbor. But you got to obviously listen to those patients, meet them where they want to be, figure out who your ideal patient avatar is. You know, I'm speaking marketing terms now, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
these are no brainers in my book. And if you do that well and you understand your target market really, really well, then I think you'll have no time, you'll have no easy time sort of bringing new patients into the door, and they come in buying already. You just
Yeah.
can't fumble the ball. You just can't
Yeah.
fumble the
Yeah.
ball.
Just don't
Don't
mess it up.
fumble,
Yeah.
and you'll be
Yeah.
fine, right?
Hmm.
You got a doctor. I'll tell you a quick story, and I love telling a story. We have a doctor that showed up to one of our offices for a job interview, nicely clean, you know, had a shirt and tie on, you know, whatever, all that stuff. We hired him, and then a few weeks later, I went by that office. This office is in a very high end part of Connecticut, by the way, and uh, the office manager, you know, lets us know that he's really struggling, basically. And so it was time for me as the CEO and sort of the chief dental officer. It was time for me to get involved. So I go to this office and I ask the doctor, like, what's going on? Like, you've been here a couple weeks. Seems like no one's interested in saying yes to you and your treatment recommendations, right? What's the deal? And you know, wouldn't you know it? Like when I went into that office to sort of have a conversation with him, obviously, you know, he's not wearing the shirt and tie anymore. Now he's wearing scrubs. And it's like these scrubs are like they'd have like pizza stains all over them, and his hair is looking terrible, and he stinks, and he just looks like he rolled out of bed. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is not the same guy that I met at my job interview like a couple weeks ago, with you. And he was like, look, I got into dentistry so that I can roll out of bed and just wake up and come to work. And I was like, you know what? That's great, and I'm glad that you know that about yourself, and want to do that. But like this office, you can't get away with it, right? The patients here are just not going to let you get away with it. And so guess what? The next day, I took a shower, cleaned up, put on a fresh shirt with a tie, a white lab coat, got a haircut, and all that. And he sold like an $11,000 veneer case, right? And then guess what he did after that? The next day after that, he resigned. And I'm like, what are you
Mm,
doing? He's like, I just can't. I'm not built for this. Like, I can't be putting on a shirt and tie every day and sell $11,000 veneer cases every day. And I was like, someone else would do that. Someone. I mean, these are what our
yeah,
patients
yeah,
demand. These are what our patients are looking for. This is what our patients expect.
yeah,
And every other doctor in the office sort of plays that role. And if you can't, then you're the odd person out. And good luck, right? Like, you're a great guy, probably
yeah,
a pretty good dentist, but like you're just not meeting the patients where they want to be met. You're just
yeah,
not exuding what they're looking for. You're not selling what they're buying. So he resigned on his own. It was actually like a little bit of a breath of fresh air to have someone so emotionally in tune with what their sort of wants and desires are,
yeah,
or not, and sort of
yeah.
self-selected out. But it was a fascinating experiment for me to be a part of, to be honest.
That's amazing. Yeah. How you said something there that was really important. I think at the beginning you said, there was a kink in the patient journey, right? And so it's hard to tell. Is it the wrong kind of patient? Is the treatment coordinator? There's all these things to the patient journey. What levers do you pull, or what levers do your team watch to make sure that that patient journey is staying consistent across all of your practices?
So I will say, if the dentists that we have on board or bring on board are not clinically delivering excellent quality care, then the faith and the trust
Hmm.
of the team starts to fall apart around that dentist, and they don't have a chance to make it, right? If the team is able and willing to have a filling or a crown done by the dentist, then you're good.
Uh,
If they all talk about
okay.
how the clinical quality there is not that great, there's no buy-in, that dentist does not have a chance. Number one. Number
There's no
two,
chance. Yeah.
there's no chance. And number two, I think all the things that happen sort of between the patient appointments, like how this person conducts themselves at their lunch hour, how this person shows up in the morning, whether they're late or on time for the morning huddle, matters, right? So there's this whole like chemistry piece, which you can call like alignment with their values, but really, like, do you get
Yeah.
along with everyone there, right? If you get along with everyone
Hmm.
there and you do good quality work, you have faith and buy-in from the team. Now everyone's promoting you now, as opposed to, we'll schedule it with Dr. X instead of Dr. Z because
Hmm.
they're not going to throw anyone under the bus or whatever. But if you don't have those two basics in place, good luck, you're not going to make it.
Mm.
So we just want people to sort of come in with with relatively high expectations, not exceedingly high, but reasonably high expectations. It's like, look, we need you to get along with everyone, we need you to be a great dentist, and then anything else you bring to the game, like if you want to bring in some muffins that you baked, great. But if you're going to be a weirdo and you don't get along and you're sort of a little bit of a distant, you don't show up to the Christmas parties, you don't show up for the dinners after work, you don't show up to the holiday
Mm.
parties, like you're not a team player, you're not involved, you're not committed, you're not present, you're not connected. That's a problem. That'll hurt you in the long run. And then that doesn't matter. Again, that doesn't matter whether you're an assistant, a doctor, the
Yeah.
CEO. That goes across the board, right? That type of presence, connection, and commitment, those are necessary ingredients to the recipe of success, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree. You got to stay plugged in with the team for sure,
Yeah.
especially when the higher up in positions that you're going. So where do you see consumerism going in dentistry? Because obviously, there's a lot of different ways it could go. But it seems like the writing's on the wall in a couple different areas of dentistry. What are your thoughts? Where do you see it going? Where are you positioning yourself, and your organization?
Well, I think, like I said before, there are certain things that are sort of so obvious, like the website and social media presence. Those are like, the most basic things that you need to have sort of in place. I think people are much more informed today than they were even just like 3, 4, 5 years ago about things like insurance participation, Yelp reviews, social media
Yeah.
reviews, right? People are sort of all they're looking for that. I think someone has already bought your service, or your is looking for your attention way before they come into the office. So there's some sort of basics that need to be in place, and then the rest is just how people are answering the phone, how the office looks and smells. All of those things sort of get people to say yes. So I think you got to have that in place, and then understand that every patient out there is a little bit more informed today than they were just a little bit while ago. As far as like uh, making a choice. They have other options. They have other people out there that are whose websites are better looking than yours, whose social media has more content
Yeah.
than yours, who's got a person answering the phone better than you. So it can be competitive,
So
and obviously
do you
those
think
who
it's
compete
do
well
the
do
inform
well.
do you think the information that they have, is it like a dental IQ thing? Their dental IQ is higher, or is it just that there's more dentists thinking in a consumer fashion?
Well, I can tell you that our portfolio of offices sort of spans the entire bell curve, if you will, of everything from sort of like call it sort of more lower middle income all the way up to like higher income dentistry and higher income sort of patients that have more of that ability and that will to pay. And then we have patient, offices and
Hmm.
patient databases that sort of skew on the other side of the bell curve. I think depending on what you're selling and who you're selling it to, you've got to act the role, act the part, and look the part as well, obviously. So people in sort of underserved communities, they're looking for you in a different way than people in more sort of more educated and more socioeconomically more sort of available communities are. So again, know your audience, know who you're speaking to, know what you want to attract and or repel. I think insurance mix has a big deal to do with that, and obviously
Yeah.
social media and what you put out there matters as well. So I think some people look for dentists in the most sort of basic ways, and never go to your website, never make an appointment online. Don't expect your calendar to be visible for the world to sort of jump into. And others are super particular and propose they pose different challenges to you as an office when they're very particular, and you've got to meet them and their demand as well. So again, for better or for worse, we're on all sides of that bell curve, and can say that um, there is some basic truth that every patient sort of has as an expectation before they walk in, and then there are some patients that sort of need a little bit more. I mean, just like, listen, like you and I can go have a slice of pizza, and it can be something very, very basic. But if it's time for you and I to go out to have a fancy dinner because we're celebrating your birthday, we're not just going to pick any old pizzeria. We're going to go to like, a nicer
Yeah.
place. And how do you choose that nicer place? Well, that's a whole different strategy or a whole new purpose for going out and looking for a place like that. So, again, meet people where they need to be met, understand what they're buying, have them understand what you're selling, right, in the clearest possible way, and I think you'll be fine.
That's awesome. That's a great analogy. Where do you see Underbite going, like, over the next 10 years?
Well, to be honest, I've learned that through COVID, we had some ups and downs over the past couple of years through COVID that sort of gave us some sense of, wow, we are doing this from our basement offices and from our bedrooms, right? When everything was shut down,
Yeah.
like everyone, right? We were running these offices from we were acquiring offices from our basements and our bedrooms, and while working from home, we were doing all that, right? Some of us better than others, I guess. Um, I would love for us to continue to do that as sort of the COVID era comes to an end. um, we have a ton of people that call us that want to work with us, and we are developing a set of resources and tools like a proper DSO, typically has, in order to offer people things like billing and HR and compliance and all the sort of basics, IT, marketing, all that sort of stuff. Those are the basic sort of services that any DSO offers. We happen to offer them to
Yeah.
our own offices, but we'd like to offer them to other offices as well as we continue to grow and grow as a proper DSO, not just necessarily grow as a portfolio of offices. And one of the things that we learned is with great leadership in place, whether that's on a regional level or at a practice level, with great leadership in place, whether that's clinical or administrative leadership, you can achieve a lot. So we're going to just sort of
Hmm.
we're going to continue to pick and choose our spots, pick and choose our relationships, pick and choose whatever opportunities we want to get involved with, and obviously, understand and continue to learn what dental offices need and perfect and refine what we offer them. And ideally, continue to sort of partner up with either affiliate offices or continue to acquire offices where we impart our strategies and services onto them to get them from point A to point B. And that's what I see ourselves doing over the next few years, provided things sort of calm down and the right people start to call us.
Yeah. Got it. And then
Yeah.
you said that you're still working from home. Is that right?
No, now it's basically like
A
we
lot of your
we've
team.
sounded the horn and people are basically back. Yeah, yeah. We do still have some people who
Okay.
have the luxury of working from home, and we do. Oh, obviously, like I'm working from home today. I'm on Zoom call after Zoom call today. So on those days, we pick and choose when it's time to work from home. But I will say, so much of what we do as dental entrepreneurs and as dental service providers, whether you're assistants, doctors, CEOs, anything in between, we're in the business of serving people, and sometimes that
Hmm.
requires you to be present, to be there. You need to make sure that every candle is lit and all the right music is playing in every office, and I think that involves some presence and
Yeah.
some of the things that you do when you're working from home are not scalable, and I'm sorry, are
Yep.
scalable, but other things that you do are not scalable when you're working from home, and for that you
Yep.
need really great leadership, someone on your team who understands the vision and the mission, who can go out there and help you sort of be, because you can't, it gets to the point where we have offices that are 250 miles apart from one another. And then what do you do when,
Yeah.
when there's a fire at one of them or a flood at one of them? Like, you got to show up, right? So
Yeah.
showing up is,
Yep.
is, I think, a major part, and working from home has its perks, but obviously to some degree also can limit, I think, what we're trying to do in the long run. So with the right, again,
I love
with
that.
leadership in place, that sort of eliminates some of those roadblocks or those potentials for not being able to grow as much as you'd like.
That's great. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to cover?
No,
Any
I'm pretty
questions that
much,
I
I
should have
don't know,
asked?
man. No, I think we hit on everything. I really appreciate you inviting me on to here and giving me a chance to tell my story, and hopefully this is something that some people can sort of learn a
Yeah.
thing or two from. And I just want to say, Gary, you've been really helpful in helping us sort of maintain what we've built and grow what we've built with the new acquisitions that we did get a chance to do together with you. So
Yeah.
again, thank you for being on our team and helping us with everything that we've been going through for
Absolutely.
the past couple of years.
I lo- obviously when I do the podcast, I try to be agnostic, because I want to make sure that you get the opportunity to share what you want to share. But just in my dealings with Underbite and who you guys are and what you guys do, you guys have a great team, a great culture, and you guys approach things very level headedly. And that might not sound that great, but when you work with a group that doesn't approach things that way, it makes it very, very difficult. And growing's hard. Growing anything with to the size that you've grown it is not easy. And so when you can do it with grace and allow people to come alongside you and grow with you, it's been amazing. And I really enjoy it, and I enjoy watching what you guys are doing. And I'm really excited what you guys are going to do in the future. I know you kind of modestly answered that 10-year question, but I'm excited to see what you guys are going to do. I know you guys are going to do some great things. How can people, if someone has questions about Underbite and the services you provide, or if you might be the right fit for either a team member or an office, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm on social media a ton on Facebook. And if anyone wants to email me, my email address is david@myunderbyte.com. Our website is myunderbyte.com. They're free to check that out as well. I will say that, again, for better or for worse, you see a lot of people on social media, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, promoting themselves, and that's fine. I'm not a big fan of that. I kind of lay low. especially for the past couple of years, been sort of kind of laying low. But one of the things that I think is something that you kind of alluded to is we are we are as level headed, I guess, for lack of a better term, as you can be, very sort of no nonsense, very straightforward, authentic, vulnerable, open, whatever it is. If we're having a bad, if we have a bad relationship with someone, we'll let them know. If we're having a great relationship with someone, we'll let them know. You don't really get a ton of like fluff with us. We're pretty as as honest as can be, and actually that's helped us a lot, right? Like one of the things that we
Yeah.
used to do, admittedly, is we would pitch, like we try to hire a new doctor and we'd pitch him this story about how the office is so awesome. Well, the offices are still awesome, but sometimes during those interviews with those new doctors, like we let them in on some of the like sort of the weeds, like what's going on in the weeds, like this person is struggling with a
Mhm.
health issue and they're not able to come into work every day on time, and they play a key role. And so as things improve with this person's health, we expect the office to improve. So we let them know right off the bat as often as we can. I think it was too much promotion and not enough authenticity. And we found that when we dialed down the
Mm.
promotion and increased the authenticity and vulnerability, and we were more open with people, then we weren't necessarily sort of pitching them one story, but the reality was totally different. So their success
Yeah.
was directly related to our willingness and ability to be open and authentic with them.
Yeah, no, I love that. When I was younger, I was taught fake it till you make it, right? That's what I was people would say, "Hey, fake it till you make it." As I grew and I learned that's like the worst thing you can do because people don't actually know what they're getting and no one can help you, no one can support you. And so just being vulnerable and being like, "Hey, we're really good at this and we're really bad at this." Or we struggle with this. We need help and support in this area. It actually people show up and help you. But if you're faking everything and you're trying to gloss everything over, it just makes it really hard for anybody to come alongside you and support you in your vision and what you're trying to do. And people sometimes we tell ourselves a story. I know I have is where it's like, well, if people know that we have these warts, then they're not going to like us. But then everybody has warts, right? There's nobody's perfect. There's always problems, and I love that approach of just being vulnerable and open. And the right people end up showing up and being able to help if you do that.
Yeah, I think if you were coming into any opportunity, whether it was for work or for play, for that matter, you know, we want to attract people that are able and willing to accomplish something with us, and that involves like rolling up your sleeves sometimes and getting involved and sort of overcoming a challenge, right? If you don't,
Hmm.
and there are certain people that come into the company understanding in advance this office is a challenge, right? We just bought this office, we need a
Mm.
new office manager, we need to take it from point A to point B. Come along for the ride. And the right person would say, I'm the bulldog they need for this, right? If you came in and
Yep.
said, we just bought this office and it's so awesome and we have such a great plan for this office and we're going to go from point A to point B and we want you to be a part of that, they can come in thinking, wow, this company is awesome. And they don't know that it's actually going to be a grind, that it's actually going to be some
Yeah.
challenges that we have to overcome together. And they are misled essentially into all the heavy lifting that we all are going to be doing in this particular with this particular role or job function or whatever. So we just found that when we express to people that with openness and vulnerability that there are going to be challenges here, the people that end up taking those opportunities are the ones that want to solve those challenges with you
Yep.
instead of, oh, they got it all figured out and I'm just here for a paycheck. The ones that come in just for the paycheck, like they have nothing to solve, it's not sexy enough for them, and they leave because you lied to them, right? If you're honest with them and tell them
Yep.
it's going to be a grind, at least now they're part of the challenge with you, right? So that's I think
Yeah.
that's the key.
Yep.
I think that's the key. I think.
Yeah, 100%. It's the opposite, right?
Yeah.
We think that people are going to think the wrong thing, but it's actually the opposite. It's going to attract the right kind of people to come and actually help you with what you want. So, I know
Yeah.
you guys do a great job with that. Well, great job today. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. I can't wait to share this. But this will be dropping soon, and we'll be sure to get it out to the masses for you.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me come on again and tell my story. Um, you know, It's been nothing but a pleasure getting to know you and getting to work with you. So I'm excited to see how we can work together in the future as well.